Greetings. This is Leia Eternal, and we're joining each other here for another episode of 1320 Time Stream. Look, it's our wavespell section here, and we're on the 6th day, which will be the Blue Rhythmic Eagle. Let's go into that here. As always, pause it to just get into that for longer. Okay, let's start with our mini breath here. We're going to go into our right elbow and our left big toe. Right elbow, left big toe. Let's share an out breath with that combination. Begin when you're ready. Some nice out breaths through that right shoulder, left big toe combination. It's good to get the energy moving. Well, now that we have a little bit of that energy moving, let's talk about it a little bit. Rhythmic Eagle. The rhythmic is that, like, I find it's really good to kind of like get after that take command energy, even though, you can't really avoid that. You take command, and then the next is the rhythmic tone. Right elbow, right shoulder, getting to the neck and spine tomorrow, getting into the center of all things. But after that energy begins moving with the right elbow, that we take command, it's kind of like much more focused. Now we start kind of organizing and bringing balance and equality to the whole situation. It's like, whoa, there's command in the area. Okay, well, what's that command going to do? It's going to start aligning and associating energies and setting things in motion. You do that thing. You do that thing. Your skill set's over here. So that whole kind of energy is about everything kind of being in its proper place and some things, being not there, right? Because that's that equalization, very much like the world bridger, which represents that death energy. Some of that things represented by the organization and equality. It's kind of like the objects that are there don't just get organized, some of them also get trimmed. You may not need everything on your desk. So while it's getting organized, it gets equalized. The eagle aspect of this, really being of the higher mind, being of the visual quality, being of creation, organizing your creations, equalizing your mind, right? Today's that day to kind of share anything that's really been on your mind, to communicate, share the vision, so to speak. Equalizing that creative aspect. You may have a lot of things you really want to do, but you're going to have to equalize that. So the most core elements are going to come out. And it's interesting because the eagle is such a mental quality and also a very visual quality. It's kind of a mix between the mental and the visual qualities, I find. And so it's like it could be full of ideas, very much like the seed is full of ideas. In fact, the seed is its helping power. And so there's a dynamic of saying like the seed could be pure ideas, while the, the eagle is like pure mind in many extents. And then, as you go towards the warrior and the earth, those kind of question marky symbols on them representing the movement of thought. And so we're starting to get more into that higher mental dynamic, which you begin to really see as you bridge the human through the Skywalker, and then all of a sudden you're kind of in like the higher realms. It's like the wizard is like putting application of the base everyday human influential free will nature into more of a hyper practice. It's like, okay, there's much more of a focus. And so this then goes further and starts representing all of the higher mental and higher mind whole world capacities. And then we start getting more into the very nature of thought and how to work with those things, intelligence and navigation and blueprinting, reflection, right? I find that a lot of those can hold very mental qualities. And so today we're really, organizing that. And so that we can come out with those creative energies, balancing those creations. Yeah, that feels good. That feels good. Feel that eagle energy in your own right, because this one also very plainly is an animal totem. In many of the other seals outside of like dog and monkey, things like that, you don't really see an animal totem. It's more like an abstract, maybe elemental, kind of a mythological totem. Like the mirror is just that, it's a physical object kind of, right? But when you go into different cultures who utilize the exact same system, which is the 1320 based Zulkanary system, you see different descriptions, because the energy pulses took on the relation or the relevance or reference point towards something that was prevalent and had influence and had like value at that time. And so like I referenced the Nahuatl version because in my sharing with this system, I've learned some of the descriptions for that system as animal totems. And so I feel like, it's relevant. And I believe the eagle is also the eagle in that particular system. And so there's still an animal, higher bird-like creature. And in this respect, I feel higher is very accurate. I like to really go into that holarchic view. If you don't know what holarchy is, it's like there's a hierarchy, which is much more of a pyramid dynamic and can begin to repress people because of the top points of that hierarchy do not connect with the so-called lower parts. But in a holarchy, it's a holism. It's a whole system. And so there is architecture, which is represented by the archy, but it's in such a way where it's equal. Everyone has an equal dynamic. There's no pyramiding. There's no standing on top of each other. There's no really bossing each other around or being dominant to the underlings or things like that, which, the patriarchy and things like that are really defined of, which is hierarchical power structures. And so we're moving into holarchic power structures when we produce ourselves in these kind of constants. And I feel this is actually a good analogy that the ego represents as like how we organize ourselves, because the ego is like that, that higher mind in some way. And so you can say, okay, this is a more dynamic concept of the architecture of human beings. And so that's holarchic. And there is a deep balance there. So I also feel it's very important that it's referenced as the rhythmic tone as well, because of that organism, because of that balance, because of that equality. And so that's what a holarchy really represents. And it doesn't sacrifice any of the vital architecture that is observed by a hierarchy, except for there isn't like a king that needs to manage and kind of call the shots around. Everyone who has their own specializations cooperates to be the gears of that great machine, kind of, and the cells of that kind of biological body, or however you want to reference things working together, and none of them having a greater importance than one another, and everyone having just as much importance as, say, being a queen or king would have. And so that's a really beautiful dynamic. And so getting back to that thing about really feeling that I want to use that word higher when representing the eagle, because it physically as a bird flies higher up in the air than many other creatures can get to. And so there is an aspect, well, this isn't hierarchical, it is like elevational. It is in physical space elevational. And so we can kind of, play with how those concepts go together for us here. And I feel that is, that's going to be it. That's going to be the sharing here for the wavespell portion of this episode of 1320 Time Stream. Stay tuned for the affirmation section. Much love.